I had another dream too, one that filled my waking hours for years. The dream of being a drummer, of making a living from it, of doing it for real. And for a while, this dream became a reality, and for a long time, it was spectacular. But what I'm asking now is what happens to your childhood dream once you grow up? What happens when you discover that you're a grown man living out the dreams of a boy? He's just so embarrassed, my friend Matthew tells an acquaintance, after the topic of my music career comes up, and I grow visibly uncomfortable, looking down in silence, telling myself it will pass. You have to own it, my father-in-law says. He likes to text me short videos of himself singing along to the one radio hit that I played on. It brings him great pleasure to imagine the discomfort this brings me. You do act incredibly weird about it, my friend Brandon says. A man who plays the guitar and sings in his living room with such effortless joy that it feels like a reproach. I mean, if I could do one thing as well as you play the drums, I would talk about it all the time. But I do not talk about it all the time. In fact, for the most part, I don't speak of it at all. Most people in my life, coworkers, students, neighbors, new friends, don't even know that I play a musical instrument, let alone that I once had a successful career doing so. And if it does come up in conversation, there have been times when I have literally felt ill afterward, groaning aloud when replaying the exchange in my mind. I make a dramatic promise to myself in these moments, telling myself that I will never speak of it again. Yet, here I am, speaking of it, trying to figure out what my problem is, because, in truth, I've never been able to explain exactly what it is that so troubles me about discussing my life as a musician. There was no scandalous downfall. I was not kicked out of any band for idiotic behavior. I never even went to an audition that I didn't get. I simply had a dream, and I followed it, then left it behind. You should be proud, a student says, watching my face grow red at the mention of my drumming. But what she doesn't get is that I am proud. It's just that there are things complicating my pride, things I have a hard time explaining even to myself. So, like the ghost of music past, I'm taking us back to a time before embarrassment, to the headwaters of joy. Because if I can trace its course from there, perhaps I can find where the waters grow murky.
You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We're trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. I love that.
No,
I love
thanks.
that. Love that part. That's where I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
That was where I almost like felt the whole day was going to be this story. I wanted it, I was like, yeah. And it was the headwaters of joy. That was the particular phrase that stuck out. And the reason I wanted you to read that is one of the 2 things. Is because of something you said later in the book that wasn't about your daughter, Frances. It was about an ornithologist we both know.
Oh, about Drew. Oh, you knew I was talking about Drew.
You don't mention him by name, right. But there is no other possible ornithologist in South Carolina that it could have been. So I went back to 2018 and I found that article.
Yeah.
And do you want to know how that article started?
I think I remember.
This is what Drew said to you.
Yeah.
You listen long enough and you get some idea, there's joy to it. J. Drew Lanham says, a long lens cannon pressed to the eye. He pushes the shutter release and the camera shoots off a rapid burst of frames. I may anthropomorphize it a bit, but I hear joy in birdsong. And then you write, it's easy to hear joy today.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating to me to read the headwaters of joy to start this book. But then it was that time with Drew that you mentioned later in the book that gave you the reporter angle to
Sure.
this exploration of your music past. And then to read it and hear Drew talking about joy in Birdsong, which like you didn't hear in your own songs, like you kind of, there was this resistance to your music career and talking about it. And it just kind of seemed like there was no joy to it at that point. And then maybe it was hearing the Birdsong. I don't know if that was a legitimate connection you made when you wrote about that in the book.
I mean, it's really good literary detective work on your part. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that direct, the joy thing. But when I did that profile of Drew was when I was conceiving some of these essays that were the start of what became the memoir. And it was a lesson in just reminding me of you don't have to have it figured out ahead of time. By it, I mean the story, right? So with Drew, I don't know what I'm going to write about, but if I go birding with him, I'm going to get all the good stuff. And with this, it's in particular, that part that I read, I knew that there was something weird about my relationship to music in the past. And I didn't know how to wrap my head around it, but I knew if I went on the scene to start reporting about it like I did with Drew, I could sort of sort it out. And then I appreciate your focusing on the sort of question of joy because, and I give my friend Darren credit for this, and I'll talk about Darren later when we get to one of my books. He's a musician who's one of my closest friends, and I shared some early, bits and pieces of this memoir with him where I was asking big questions, and he said to me, this is real interesting, but I want to know about when it was great. When was it awesome? And I was like, oh my God, Darren, yeah, you're right. I can't just...
It's giving me chills thinking about, because that feels like the essential question.
Right. You got to start with the love affair to then see, how did this get complicated? I was just writing about the complications. So I appreciate Darren pointing me in that direction. And of course,
a good friend.
Yeah, right. And that's the root of all, of lots of complicated feelings that we have in life is usually it's about something we love.
Yeah. So it's just I just loved that connection. And especially with the idea of birds are unembarrassed. They have no self-consciousness about their song. And that's why it's so beautiful to listen to, because they're going to sing no matter what. And all you have to do is listen. There's no judgment on it. But it's he says anthropomorphizing it a bit. Mm-hmm. But I think part of what makes birdsong great is it's not human, because, there's...
Man, yeah, amen.
So it just, to me, this is how my brain works. When I read all of that and then read the article, and even just knowing Drew and how much he loves birding,
Yeah.
and all the obstacles he's faced to had to live this life as a black birder and ornithologist in the South. And the point is, though, there's struggle in that too, but the joy, man, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
It was great. I don't know.
Love that, Matt. That is, I appreciate you making that connection.
And I think for me, that's why I loved your story. And we're not just, this isn't a Bang Bang Crash interview, right? But Nic Brown, that's a big part of who you are and where you've been. And we wouldn't have gotten any of you. And I've loved your fiction, you are a really good writer.
Thank you, Matt.
But to not know all of this about you would have felt like being robbed of something really important of where you come from. And I think focusing on those headwaters of joy to then see, it got murky, but it wasn't always like that. There's something beautiful about that recognition of just let's go back to the start. Let's go to Pete. Let's go to being with friends. Let's go to the dream.
Yeah.
As opposed to what happens when you let's say, reach the dream, reach the goal, right? Because we all know that kind of sucks for everybody. I don't think there's anybody that... I got my dream interview after working for 4 years as manager.
Yeah.
I wanted to work for Michigan and Xavier. Those were the two basketball teams I loved. I got the interview at Xavier and I quit.
Right.
And then Drew here says, I lost my full ride DuPont scholarship and found my life.
Sure.
There's so many parallels with that of just... when you lose your joy with something, or maybe didn't have it in the first place, but then it opens up so many other possibilities for where life takes you.
Totally.
And yeah, this was a beautiful book. And
Thanks.
I think the one related, the one thing I relate to the most is just the vulnerability in realizing, like, this is a strange relationship to music? Why do I feel this way? And then writing a whole book about figuring that out, that was profound.
Yeah. It still seems like stranger to other people. Of course, to me, like parts of it make perfect sense. I'm like, why wouldn't anybody would feel this way about it? But that's not the case. But then there were also at the same time lots of aspects to it that I hadn't figured out that, writing this did help me, sort of wrap my head around. And in that section that I read, I say I never talk about it. And that my relationship has changed dramatically since the book has come out. I'm much more comfortable talking about my past
and I'm
as
glad.
a musician.
But I also like your other books more because I've read this one now.
Interesting. Yeah.
I feel, because this was the first one I'd read.
Okay. Yeah.
So then to go read what came after the drumming is really interesting, knowing that this is where you started. And, you totally changed gears. And there's a lot of anxiety in that. The letting go of who you were.
Sure. To
become this new version of yourself. And then, we'll talk about the chapter with Francis and the eclipse, but also the idea that, like, none of this is really who I am. You could lose writing too, and there'd still be joy. There'd still be reasons to live. That's what life is about, right? Have you seen Scotty Scheffler? The controversy over the golfer?
Mm-hmm. No.
He's number one in the world.
Yeah.
He's killing everything.
I know what you're talking about. He said that winning tournaments doesn't bring joy.
He's like, why do I care?
Yeah, I saw that headline. I'm like, of course winning tournaments doesn't. Like, that's not what it's about.
He's sitting here like, look, and then Tom Brady comes out, who clearly has a guilty conscience about his relationship to sports. And he's like, well, you can be both a great father and great at your sport. And it's like, that's not what Scotty Scheffler said. He said, if the sport got in the way of the other, my family, I'd quit. Right. But so anyway, this book got me thinking so much.
Cool.
And I'll always remember reading this,
Wow.
It was like such a great day. And it's the story of your life and music, which is a difficult business. And I know we talked about you connecting with Pete McDade because of him reaching out after
that was so awesome.
Sold and Bang Bang Crash when he came to read at City Lights. And I think there are a lot of musicians or just artists that would relate to this story because of their own history with their art form or their music.
But it's also, my hope that it's not just artists. It sounds like you found ways to
totally
to see yourself in it, because it's not like I was a huge superstar. I was just a guy who did something and then started doing something else is, one way of looking at it.
But how many people can't do that? Because they put everything in their identity into this. Like when I quit basketball, they're like, why would you work so hard for 4 years to give it up? And I was like, well, because I don't want this. I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I wanted this, and it became something different. And here we go. I lost basketball, and I found my life. Took a while. I had to lose a bunch of other things too, But that's the whole point, is you can keep recreating yourself. And that's inspiring. I mean,
well, I appreciate that, and I think you're right. Of course, I get uncomfortable when people are like, "Your book is inspiring." I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't trying to inspire." But you're right. It's just living, like taking the next step and not getting stuck.
I was an academic advisor or another student services job for 10 years, and one of the main issues students had was letting go of something they thought they wanted.
Oh, right.
Or what they thought other people in their lives wanted them to be.
Sure.
And so it's inspiring in the sense that it can give freedom to people who are who want to be something else, and they know that. And just to say, like, even going back to college at a later age, that's a very difficult thing to do. Again, I've worked with people that have come back to college at 30, and now granted they weren't drummers, but they had a different career.
Yeah.
And there's anxiety in that. And it's well, how do I do this now? Right? Oh, I missed the boat on going to college, and then you kind of looked into it with the,
oh my God,
the deferment or whatever. It didn't lapse. So it's like, that was a sign from the heavens too. But I just think there's a lot, not that you were trying to teach anyone life lessons, but I think any good book, there are things in there. There are elements to the story where someone says, man, maybe I can live the life I really want to live because I read this. And that can happen in a memoir or fiction.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think you achieved that yeah, even with the like learning that Meredith's husband was part of this, and that was a big step.
Big part of it.
on the road back to joy. So we have to shout out Meredith McCarroll too,
and Jeff Christmas
and Jeff for bringing us together technically.
So true.
And finding that connection. But at any rate, this was a joy to read.
Thanks.
And because you've given us the gifts of your books.
Oh man.
As always.
Oh my gosh.
I gotta bestow the gifts upon.
He has brought wrapped presents. I'll start small.
There were a lot of...
Or should I?
Yeah, that's good. There were a lot of ways I could have gone with this. But sticking with the Pete McDade thread and people I think you should be friends with.
Yeah.
And you might know him because of the University of Mississippi connection.
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I know about this book.
Okay.
And I know about him. And I know about the publisher. And I'm super interested in all this. So this is What Doesn't Kill You Opens Your Heart by Max Hipp.
So Max is in a band in Oxford, although he lives in Taylor, I believe.
Well, that's where Francis went to preschool, was in Taylor.
Because you were a Grisham Writer-in-Residence, and I was like, well, I have the Mississippi connection right here. Both musicians. He's going to be on Books on the Bed eventually. He came to City Lights. This book is very unheralded, but you will appreciate it.
I
know it.
Can't wait.
And you two would be friends, so I hope.
Oh, I'm sure.
Whether you go back to Mississippi or you all happen to be near each other at some point, that you get to hang out.
Well, I look forward to reading it. Max, I look forward to meeting you. Awesome. Thank you.
And the second one is also music related because of, and he read with Pete McDade a few weeks ago in Asheville. Yeah. I saw them together. I'm actually going to his house for Books on the Bed next week.
Awesome. I don't know this guy.
So Michael Amos Cody, Streets of Nashville. Michael was a songwriter in Nashville in the 80s for about a decade. And guess what he did? He left. He quit. And he became an English professor. He's at East Tennessee State University.
Oh, wow.
And
I do know who this guy is. Yeah, I know just who this guy is.
So freaking cool. He's so talented. I could listen to him talk about books or music and play music all day. Another guy that I just think there's a kinship.
Oh, yeah. I know who this guy is. I have not met him. I'm sure he has no idea who I am, but I know who he is and have thought I got to meet this guy. Oh, awesome. Thanks, man.
I think, so this one is, because it's paying homage to a time when Nashville was much different, a forgotten Nashville when he was there. And so this guy, Ezra, the main character, is on the precipice of a dream and then witnesses a murder, right? And everything changes. But I think just the transition from songwriter to book writer, story writer with Michael, there's a lot in common there. So I just, a big thing with Books on the Bed is I want people who don't know each other to become friends that I think should be friends.
Love it.
And they're very good writers too.
Yeah, so. I've thought about both of these guys and thought I should know them. And now I have their books.
There you go.
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you.
I love it.
Well, I appreciate it.
So, I do that because it's important. I can't give, much by way of money to people or even who knows how many people will listen to this, but I can give gifts because I would be nothing without the people that write books. Truly, books changed my life. I'm so thankful that all of you say yes to doing this and sharing the books that you love. So that's what makes it go around.
Well, I'm thankful you're here and spending time with me. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, so the other thing I want to get to before we talk about your Books on the Bed, there's another interesting storyline here about starting and restarting again. And there was something I read, I don't remember what website it was, but you wrote that I was 27 writing my first book. Project completion was impossible, indefinite and scary. An endpoint for me seemed indefinable. Mm-hmm. It was if I were in a race whose finish line was invisible. How do I pace myself? How do I know when I've crossed the tape? I had some stories which I liked. That was good. I had a defined narrative arc, the 24-hour course of Hurricane Hugo through a single town, which was also good. Beyond that, I was lost. And here comes one of your books on the bed, and we could theoretically like go into it from here because it was Dennis Johnson.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I vaguely remember
You
this.
said around this time, I heard Dennis Johnson speak about his own Link story collection. He said, and I'm paraphrasing from memory here, but something along the lines of, I like how this book is like an album. You can just open it up anywhere and read a piece and enjoy it.
Man, that's just, I guess I'm still talking about the same thing. I think that's from an old piece. I'm still talking about the same thing.
It was on some website that looked like it was from 2008, you know?
Yeah.
And I wish I would remember to give credit to that. Maybe I can put it in the notes.
Well, so I have that book that you mentioned here, Jesus' Son by Dennis Johnson. And it was a super important book for me.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because you're starting over.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know how to do it. Right? With drums, it seemed a little bit more natural.
Okay.
Right? Like, you know, you had this progression, you were talented, you had a good teacher, a very young success. But with writing, you're completely building a new foundation. How do I write a book? Even if I think I can.
Well, I think my history as a musician helped me with that question that I was writing about, because I knew, you know, the music can be very abstract, right? But I knew as a musician what it was like to structure a song, right? And that once you get in there, there are super comfortable structures to find yourself in, right? So as a pop musician, it's very comfortable to work within verse, chorus, double chorus, solo, outro, right? I mean, which is the format of every song on the radio, right? Yeah. Once you realize that, you're like, oh yeah, it is. And that doesn't mean all the songs sound the same. And I remember distinctly this feeling when I was first writing of feeling like I don't understand what the structure is in writing the way I do with music. But the fact that I had already figured it out in one art form, I was like, I'm going to get to this point with writing where there are structures that I can use as roadmaps. I'm just not there yet, you know? And I think maybe with somebody else who hadn't already become comfortable in an art form, they didn't even know that those roadmaps are like inevitable, you know?
Well, just so we can bring in Jim, even though you don't have his book on the books on the bed, because it also ties into the question, like what you were struggling with in his class, his workshop. You know, like
sure.
You couldn't, and I forget the term that he used.
The Newman.
Yes.
What's the Newman of this story? We're talking about Jim McPherson.
Yes, at the University of Iowa, when you were going there for the workshop to become a writer now. Right? You left New York behind. You thought you'd go back. Seems like your wife knew differently.
She's always right.
And so now you're struggling with a different thing here.
Well, I mean, when Jim was talking about the Newman, that's all the stuff that has nothing to do with structure, you know? But like when I go back to like my drum teacher, Pete, you know, he taught me how to play drums. And then we got to a point where we didn't play music anymore and he would just talk to me. And I write about this in the book. Yeah. And I was young and I remember asking him, it seemed perfectly natural, but then there'd be days where I was like, we just had a drum lesson. I didn't play a note of music. And I would ask him, you know, finally, like, why aren't we playing music anymore? And he said, well, I've taught you the alphabet, but now I got to teach you what to say with it.
That's a bar. God, I love that.
Right.
But maybe we could use this thread as a way to dive into the first book on the bed so that you can talk about why you love this book and how it helped you becoming a writer.
So Jesus' Son by Dennis Johnson, massively important book for me, as well as with a lot of my cohort at the time that say I was at Iowa, you know, that we were all carrying this book around. Yeah. Even though it wasn't a new book then, it, I think, was sort of peaking in importance for writers of my age, you know. For one thing, the size of it is wildly inviting. As Dennis Johnson pointed, it's a very small book. You can put it in your pocket. Literally. You know, it's just like right there. But there's something else, that he mentioned you can pick it up and read anywhere. It's not reliant on a narrative arc. In a way, it's a story collection. You know, it's sort of somewhere between a story collection and a novel. But there were two super important lessons for me that I took away from this. And the first happened when I was learning how to write a story and thinking about how to shape a novel. And I was reading this book. And I was maybe 2 pages into a story, and I thought, this is the best story I've ever read. Like, I love this story more than anything. And then I just thought, I could stop reading the story right now and I don't need to read anymore. And like, my mind is blown. And it made me realize like the important thing about a story is not the ending. The important thing about the story is every sentence. Every sentence has to be the best sentence. If the middle of the second page is the best part of the story, that's when the story's happening. It needs to be good enough that you can stop before you get to the end and you're like, that story's incredible. And for me, it released this technical pressure, which for me was a lot of like, I got to stick the ending. I got to build up. I got to build till something important happens and I got to stick the ending. And if you're building, then the story's not alive, right? Every line has to be sticking the ending. And these stories, they're just sparks shooting out of every sentence, right? And so for me, it allowed me to adjust pressure on the ending and put pressure on every sentence. And that really transformed the way I looked at, paragraph and the shape of a story, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And so...
yeah, talk about a profound experience.
Well, there was a long time when I was writing stories, and it was around the same time people would say, like, Nick, I love that story, man. But the prose is sort of a mess, and I'd be like, whatever, cool, thanks. I'm glad you like the story. Like, who cares if the prose is a mess? And then this is around the time where I had this realization of like becoming obsessed with the sentence. And it seems so stupid to say, but it was like I'd forgotten that there isn't a difference between a story and your sentences. Your sentences are your story. And if you make every sentence perfect, it's going to reveal the soft spots in your story. And so that was another thing that was happening to me as a writer at the time, was absolute pressure on every sentence.
Which it seems like would almost like imprison, like you're talking about how that actually freed you, is to think about that.
Sure.
It seems like, oh, well, that's so technical, the sentence.
Right.
But it's not.
The technical demands of writing reveal soft spots in your storytelling. And when you're building, you're just writing a bunch of soft sentences. And you just got to write about the thing that's important at all times, and then your story's important. That's what I thought when I was reading Dennis Johnson, at least.
Yeah, what a gift.
Oh, yeah. And then another thing that happened with this book, and I opened it up today, I was looking at it, and I saw some of these notes, and I remember, this was like 2006 when I'm writing this.
I love this.
I remember reading this book and thinking like, be reading a story, like this story, a very well-known story of his from this book. There are a lot of movements in time, right? In the book where the protagonist is flashing back, flashing forward, moving laterally in time. It's a real technical tour de force, which he pulls off effortlessly. And I remember thinking, like, I read the story and then I thought, how does he do that? It's not a mystery. It's right here. Like, how he does it is on the fourth paragraph of this page. Then he moves, at this point, a new flashback I wrote right here. And I remember this was right when I started realizing, like, it's not a mystery how a story works. It's a highly reactive mechanism made out of little sentences. And you can just look at it and say, oh, that's where the first flashback is. It ends there and moves back. There's 1.5 paragraphs there. That creates that tempo. And, it allowed me to sort of realize that storytelling's not mysterious.
Yeah, it's not like a secret they're keeping from you.
That's exactly, and it feels like it because when we read it, it's a magic trick. But if you go see a magician and you leave and you think, I want to do that, unless you're a little kid, you're not thinking like, I need to become magical. But for readers, we still feel that. And a lot of that is like the magician, his trick's right in front of you. You just look at it closely and you can figure it out. And I started doing that with this book.
I love that. And Jen Fox was talking about this when I was in Arkansas with one of her books on the bed, of getting through a story, getting to the end, and then realizing there was this mind-blowing moment, but that if you really look back at the whole story, it was there all along. You should have known it was coming.
The inevitable surprise is what I call it, sure.
But when you're reading a story for the first time, you're often just there for the story.
Yeah.
You can't at the same, it's kind of like when you're watching a great film. Like you need to watch it
right.
2, 3, 4 times to really be able. That's why, like when people say, The Wire is my favorite show. A lot of those people have watched it 3 or 4 times because you can't possibly catch everything on one watch or one read. And then it's like, but there's that revelation of, it was all there.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hide anything.
No.
They're not superhuman.
It's constructed for you to feel that way.
Exactly.
The blind spots are there. They're built by the author. And with Dennis Johnson, I mean, this book still has mysteries that are unfathomable in what he does technically, which is part of what I love about it. But it's also because he was writing about a lot of stuff that was real to him, and that gave him the ability to do that.
I mean, when you can say 2 pages into something, you could set it down, and it's incredible that it's good. Kind of reminds me, Damon Young was talking about this up in Pittsburgh when he read Catch-22 for the first time. It was the first book he threw across the room in the middle of a story,
Yeah.
Like there are some of those books where you're like, or you just stop because you actually don't want to go on. You're like, how is this so good? There are just those moments where you're even in the middle of a story, you're recognizing how special this is.
Yeah.
And so to have that and then open those floodgates for you as a writer, and I mean, no pun intended, actually, with the flood.
Yeah.
But I mean, truly, that's your first book became stories. Is it a novel? Is it short stories?
Exactly.
They're linked,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. But you got a lot from this book and how you were going to construct that first one.
My past as a musician helped inform that too, because that book, I was like, how many stories am I going to write to make a book? It's hard to think of a book. Like, when is a book over, And I couldn't find a way to wrap my head around it. So then I started thinking of like a record. And I was like, well, I'm used to sequencing a record, about 6 songs aside, 12 tracks. And so I was like, I'll do 12 stories. And then when you're sequencing a record, at least back then, you had to plan for side B. Like the start of side B had to be important too. And so it helped me sequence 12 stories, and the flow of them, I thought of it as an album. And so that helped me find sort of a path into just structure,
I love that. You can't escape it, the musical past.
No.
It's always there. But it also reminds me of something that Meredith and I talked about. So that was kind of the theme of the interview, I feel like, is what even is a book?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of these are actually super weird books that I've collected that ask that question. There's only one that is a traditional.
And now this makes so much sense why you were friends with her. Because literally everything that she picked, it seemed, was playing with that idea. Like, what is a book? What is a novel, right? I mean, Jean Toomer's Cane, right, was in there. It's like, I can throw poems in the middle of a novel. Like, I can do whatever I want, right? As long as this is my book, right? No one can tell me what restrictions to put on it. And that's just kind of a through line that I've been trying to pay attention to is.
That's cool.
Yeah, what books are kind of playing with that question. And, here's a bunch of them. But I'm curious, is there anything from this book that you could pick out a couple pages or a couple paragraphs to read to give us insight into why this is so special at the sentence level?
Well, I mean, every page in this reveals why it's so special on the sentence level. But I'll read this section in the middle of Jesus' Son that I see that I marked when I was first starting to take apart these stories and sort of get perspective. This is in the story work. Protagonist is in a bar, which is set in Iowa City. When we lived in Iowa City, we spent a lot of time wondering, was this the Fox Head? Was this George's? Was this, what George, come on. But the characters have almost, a bar fight has almost just happened, okay? And then the protagonist says, and then came one of those moments. I remember living through one when I was 18. So I'll just stop right there. This is technically super weird, right? So he's in the scene, he says, and then comes one of those moments, like in the scene, and then he moves back in time, right? And then came one of those moments. I remember living through one when I was 18. We flash back, okay? So I remember living through one when I was 18 and spending the afternoon in bed with my first wife before we were married. Our naked bodies started glowing, and the air turned such a strange color, I thought my life must be leaving me. And with every young fiber and cell, I wanted to hold onto it for another breath. A clattering sound was tearing up my head as I staggered upright and opened the door on a vision I will never see again. Where are my women now, with their sweet, wet words and ways, and the miraculous balls of hail popping into green translucence in the yards. We put on our clothes, she and I, and walked out into a town flooded ankle deep with white, buoyant stones. Birth should have been like that. That moment in the bar, after the fight was narrowly averted, was like the green silence after the hailstorm. And so you see, like...
Oh, my God.
Right? So he flashes back to a hailstorm. And so it's actually what he's doing is he's describing a moment in time by describing a different moment in time.
God. That's electric.
Oh, every page is like that.
I should have read this before but that's what's beautiful about this for me even is I'm discovering through this process.
Sure.
One of my favorite things is when someone reads something like that and I'm like, oh my God, I need to have it. I need to have it.
You gotta read that book, man.
Holy smokes. I don't think we could have started with a better one because it just felt like this is one of those that is just ever present in your life and your writing. And Dennis Johnson, like, shouts out. Like, I wouldn't have never known about this if it weren't for you. Well, maybe I would have eventually, but no one's ever mentioned it to me. I mean, which sounds crazy.
Yeah, I almost didn't include it because I was like, everybody talks about Jesus' son.
But they don't. But they don't. Yeah, you know? Well, I would, and then now I'm like thinking, okay, who else might pick that eventually? But it's the first mention in this project.
Well,
and
it's a great book.
I love that because I love that there's just hardly any overlap and that all of these books are just different parts of people's stories, you know? But who might then hear you talk about this and say, maybe I need that right now for whatever reason. That's the beauty of it.
I'll add for any listener that it's not about Jesus' son. That's a quote from a Velvet Underground song about a heroin addict. The protagonist, who is unnamed but is referred to by certain nicknames, has a drug problem at certain points, although it's not a drug book. But, it's named Jesus' son, and some people are like, everything about the book is a little confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is a book? Yeah, of course it is.
There you
go. Let's keep it confusing. That was great. I love it. So what do you want to do for number 2?
See, now you've messed up my order here. Well, we'll talk about swimming studies because this is definitely a book that asks a question like, what is a book? And this is another book that was super important, the most important book for me when I was writing Bang Bang Crash.
Really?
Yeah. So this is a book called Swimming Studies by the author and artist Leanne Shapton. She's it's hard to say what she's best known for, but I guess her largest career footprint would be as a painter. And she was the visual editor at the New York Times editorial page for a while. Now she's the visual editor for the New York Review of Books. She's an incredible watercolor painter. She's also an unbelievable writer.
I hate those people. Why are they so good at everything?
Man.
Gosh.
She's incredible. But when she was young, and this is a memoir written in short essays. When she was young, she was a top swimmer in Canada. She was number 8 in the country as a swimmer, and she left it behind. She made it to the Olympic trials, which she writes about, and she left it behind, and she wrote this book called Swimming Studies, which is not a memoir about swimming, while also it's a memoir about swimming. It's about living your life as a normal person, day to day, having a past that informs your perspective on what's happening. And I read this book, and I'm not interested in musician biographies. Honestly, I don't think there's one I've ever finished. It's just not, like maybe someday I'll get my head wrapped around it. But I read this book, and I was like, oh, this is how I can write about my life as a drummer. And
I love that.
I stole so much from this book. And was in touch with her about it. It was
really?
like, I'm stealing this chapter. I'm stealing this structure. I wasn't worried that she was going to care. I didn't want somebody after the fact to be like, Leanne, have you read Nic Brown's Bang Bang Crash? So I was in touch with her ahead of time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Letting her know how inspired I was and what I was going to steal. And I stole a lot. It really helped. But if you want, I'll read.
Yes, please do.
This is the first page of... really the first full chapter in this book. It's called Quitting. Say I'm swimming with people in the ocean, a pool or a lake, and one of them knows about my history as a swimmer and remarks to the others, Leanne's an Olympic swimmer. I'll protest. No, I only went as far as the Olympic trials. I didn't go to the Olympics. But the boast bobs up like a balloon, bright and curious to some, wistful and exposed to me. So you've read my book, right?
Yeah.
And you can tell, and in my opening chapter, I was like, oh, I want the first paragraph to feel like that. And I timed out the lines so that they would land the same. I do a lot of sort of copy experience with my students. Let's find something that we are inspired by and let's, steal the form. Musicians have an easier time doing that, right?
Yeah.
We hear a riff, let's steal that and build this song up on it. Let's sample this. As writers, I'm not advocating plagiarism, but just, being inspired by form and shape. And so this book, too, is also filled with paintings.
Yeah, I was noticing the images.
So, and you notice in Bang Bang Crash, I do the same thing where I have photographs. These are photos of her old swimsuits where she writes about them. And I do a similar thing in my book. So, man, this is an incredible book. It is so beautiful. Your takeaway from this book is not about swimming. It's about beautiful writing, about thinking about water and your relationship to the past. It's such a great
Which is what any memoir should be,
exactly.
Like to me, and maybe that's why, I don't know if that's why you struggle with music biographies. Because
yeah, I got a complicated relationship with.
But I rarely read. I rarely want to read about a person's life by just reading about what they've done.
That's it. What it is. Right?
One of the gifts I almost got you, mostly because of the connection to the chapter with your daughter and the eclipse. Mm-hmm. Was Richard Grant's Race to the Bottom of Crazy. I don't know if you've read that yet.
I have his first book, the Pluto.
Dispatches from Pluto,
Yeah, and I had dinner with him once. He's such a nice guy.
I was wondering if you knew him.
Yeah, I met in Oxford.
I got to interview him last year at the Mississippi Books Festival, which was huge because Dispatches from Pluto is why I found the courage to move to Franklin.
Wow.
It helped me.
Right.
But Dispatches from Pluto was like, again, it just... He wasn't explicitly saying, like, hey, here's how you move to a random place in the middle of nowhere. But his whole scenario in New York is how I was feeling in Minnesota. And to me, I was just like, you know what? This guy didn't really have a good reason to go there. He just kind of did it and figured it out. But in his latest book, Race to the Bottom of Crazy, Dispatches from Arizona, he goes back to where he spent all those years in Arizona in the 90s, or maybe it was part late 80s too. And now he has a daughter. And it's completely changed what he writes about and how he writes about it. And she was the star of the show. That book was, to me, I remember more of.
Love it. I got to read that.
So, but hearing you talk about this book and why it helped you is because sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, you have to be so, like I have to write about my life as a musician.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what was going to make your book great, nor would I have wanted to really read about that explicitly. So it's so cool to know where this came from, like your inspiration, things that you took.
This was
some things from
compass point for me that helped guide my entry into writing about that. And this was a book. I didn't know anything about this book.
How'd you find it?
Well, my office is right next to the library, and I just always, I get coffee and walk around the, contemporary releases thing downstairs, and it looks great, right? And I was like, I'll take that with me. It won. This isn't an unknown book,
right?
But she also, not in this issue, but maybe the one before of Harper's, they published in the front a very short excerpt of a new thing she's working on. It's so good, I couldn't believe it. I was in New York. I had it on the subway with me, and I read it 3 times in a row. And then took photos of it, turned it into a PDF, sent it to Darren, my friend, and a couple of, all of us who are super fans of hers. Lovely Ann Shapton.
I can't wait to read that. And I love these connections between authors that are generous, right? That are good relationships, because sometimes there's not that communication and people might be a little protective or a lot protective over what they do. Mm-hmm. Going back to Rachel Beanland in Virginia, when she was writing The House is on Fire about the Richmond Theater Fire of 1811, she met up with a historian who wrote the history book on that. And that historian, Meredith Henny Baker, just gave her everything.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
They met up, it was during COVID, so they were like, 6 feet apart, but she came with a bag full of archives, essentially.
Right on.
I'm like, that's so cool. That's how books should be. Don't we want more people to write
Yeah, when I read a book that I love, I'm trying more to reach out to the author with just a short email and say, like, hey, man, I just read your book. Can't stop thinking about it. Love it. Because as a writer, I know, like, it's very alienating, lonely. It's not like being a musician where you're on stage. And it's nice to hear from peers. And
I found my way to Meredith's history book through Rachel's novel.
See?
So I read her book because Rachel read a novel, which sometimes is the entry point to history for people.
Oh, for sure.
I tend to follow up on that. Not everybody does, but I like to see, okay, well, where'd this come from? Let's read that book too.
Yeah, love that.
So it's cool now that I get to do that with this because I know
you got to read this book.
You
got to read this book. She's got a handful that are super interesting. She's a great writer. But yeah, the past as a competitive swimmer, informing her life as a working artist today. I was like, there it is. And
another one of those multi-talented people, right?
Well, she's just infuriatingly talented in everything she does.
I know sometimes I'm like, I want to be as good at one thing as some people are at 3 or 4 things, but bless them for being that good, I'm excited. This is definitely one now that.
Oh, you got to get it.
Yeah. So we got number 2.
Okay, yeah.
What's number 3 on the list?
Well, let's talk about Light Years by James Salter.
I've never heard of this book.
Well, this is like buying a new car and then you see it everywhere. I'm getting ready to talk to you about James Salter and Light Years, and now you'll see James Salter everywhere.
I'm sure.
Because he's an important writer. He's my favorite writer.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Huh.
And it's not like the guy sold a ton of books, but he's the classic, like, writer's writer. He's the bookseller's writer. So, you're going to, he's just...
Thank you for giving me yet another trick in the bag for selling books. I'll make sure we get this.
So, Sport and a Pastime is his best-known novel. Light Years, I think, would be his second best-known. They're both... It's not like either's a bestseller. Light Years is my favorite. It starts with my friend Darren coming over to the house and bringing me a book. Right?
No, I love
and
it.
So, if I'm talking about important books, I'm always going to talk about Light Years, but also it seemed to fit with your podcast, right? Because this was just such a great recommendation from a friend. And, of course I'd heard of James Salter, but I hadn't read him at all, I don't think. Part of what I think about when I think about him is the importance of having friends who have good taste that elevates yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Darren, who's not a writer, he's a drummer, great drummer. He was the drummer in Ben Folds 5, which everybody knows that band, but he's an incredible songwriter, and he's just got incredible taste, right? He knows art in all the forms, but he's also, he's one of these guys who, I feel like every writer has a friend who's not a writer, but actually still reads more than you, Darren's that guy. We lived on the same street for several years.
Yeah, it seems like he's had a pretty huge impact. I mean, already bringing him up with the questions in your memoir, and now this favorite book recommendation ever.
Yeah, I talked to Darren a lot, But yeah, he came by with this book one day.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was 2007. He's like, you should read James Salter. You'll love this book. All right. And in a lot of the same ways that I was talking about Jesus' Son, this book, I feel like I'll never figure out how and why it works. It is, and this is what everyone says about James Salter. You get Richard Ford talking about James Salter or something, they're like, he is the master of prose. But he breaks all technical rules with sort of total control and confidence. I mean, I remember reading this book and thinking, how is this working, And he tells, especially in Light Years, a story that could be very melodramatic. It's about a marriage that falls apart and takes part over many years. And it's a melodramatic story in some people's hands. And in this, there's nothing melodramatic about this. It's very cold-eyed. sort of a view of the events. And it's not cold in that it's not invested in consciousness and emotion, but there's a remove that makes him seem like he's God. You're reading this and it's like, what? Oh my God. He's just created humanity and is like, and this is the way it is.
Wow.
And that sounds crazy, but part of what I think about with James Salter a lot that is important for me as a writer, and part of why his stories are, I think, powerful, is a certain element of cruelty. And I'm a nice guy. A lot of people I know are nice that are writers. And if you write a story that's nice, it's not necessarily going to be a great story, you know? James Salter has this thing where he writes things and you're like, I can't believe he's writing about this. You know, not in a lewd or shocking way. He's just not afraid of telling truths that are real uncomfortable in a real direct way. And that was really helpful for me particularly when I was writing my last novel, In Every Way. It just helped me give a remove when I wanted to write about things that were very emotionally complicated.
Yeah, it's like you're not that.
That's right.
Like you're not thinking that you're not this cruel. You're not the scene. You're not these characters, but you can write about it.
That's exactly right.
But I feel like a lot of people get entangled in that way. You know, like, oh, I have to write what I feel.
Okay, sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. You know, but with him, a lot of what I say is not necessarily cruelty, but sort of shocking insight is also oh, I've thought that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
we all have those people that are like, oh, I'm glad someone else.
That's exactly right. I don't think of James Salter as he seems great. I know a lot of people who knew James Salter. He was good friend and a stand-up, you know, but and the same, you know, I talk about this with my students, you don't need to be afraid about writing about anything, right? No one thinks Stephen King is a serial killer. You know what I mean? Philip Roth was invited to the White House. You know what I mean? John Updike was a paragon of, you know, literary excellence. And you know what I mean? The stuff they wrote, you know? No, it takes a lot for somebody to think oh, you're actually crazy. But James Salter has an impressionistic take on how he writes that, man, there's nobody I go back to more for inspiration.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've had some people, I had my first claim of Book of the Century in one of my latest interviews that they felt was the best. But it's not usual that I get people that say this is their the best book to them, best novel, you know, their favorite. So that's always a really special thing to hear about. And why, you know?
Sure. Well, I mean, part of it is it wasn't part of my you know, I didn't learn about it at school or in the workshop or something, you know. And
is there still something to that? I always wonder about this with being in the world of literature. It's refreshing getting a gift or something, you know, finding a book in a way that isn't from other writers or that isn't on lists on LitHub or any of, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's coming in a way that's this is just your friend who drums that also reads a lot.
Exactly. Darren's you'll like this. I'm oh yeah, you're exactly right. Of course, then, as I mentioned to you when I started talking about him, then you know, I talked to my father-in-law who's a writer, and I'm you know, I just read a James Salter novel, and he's oh yeah, well, he's the best.
Yeah.
It's
and now you get all these connections because of, that's what I love about reading an author and then finding other people that love them.
Totally. And this, there are only two other people who I've writers know James Salter, but there are only two other people who are really James Salter nuts, you know, and that I've connected to, and it's it is a real potent connection.
Oh yeah. So is there any scene that you could pick out that you would want to read from?
Yeah, I'll read part of this. Let's see. This is interesting. This is the start of the 5th chapter. This is very James Salter. This is part of he does this impressionistic thing. Declarative sentences, a lot of them without verbs, but there's a phrase, the second sentence here, life is meals. He actually wrote a book later called Life is Meals. That's just, he kept a diary of every meal that he made with his wife for quite a while, and it is a super weird book.
Sounds like it.
And just
I love it, though.
Amazing. Like, there's nothing I want to do more than read 2 paragraphs of James Salter writing about oysters. Like, that's my dream reading experience. And I love that book.
That's so good.
So this is the start of the 5th chapter of Light Years, which is a story of Nedra and Veery, a married couple outside of New York City in mid-20th century. 5th chapter. Life is weather. Life is meals. Lunches on a blue-checked cloth on which salt has spilled. The smell of tobacco. Brie. Yellow apples. Wood-handled knives. Period. That's the end of the paragraph, right? This is so like him, okay? He's very cinematic and impressionistic. This is how it is, right?
It's almost like a camera's panning to these things across the room.
So, yeah, the opening sentence, this is, of course, the most famous sentence in the novel. I mean, to me, but it's the opening. We dash the Black River. Its flats smooth as stone. Not a ship, not a dinghy, not one cry of white. The water lies broken, cracked from the wind. This great estuary is wide, endless. Right? So it's the whole thing of starting, we dash the Black River. I'm like, we're starting in plural point of view. Here we go. And then there'll be moments where he pops out into first person, right? He's describing the woman. On her shoulders, there was perfume. I'm going to describe her life from the inside outward, from its core. The house as well, rooms in which life was gathered, rooms in the morning sunlight, the floors spread with oriental rugs. So it's very impressionistic.
I can see why
very clear-eyed.
This is attractive.
Oh, man. And it's a great story, too.
Even just the excitement you can feel if you you can just...
How does he do it?
Imagine you reading this for the first time and being dumbfounded.
Man, that's exactly it. I'm still dumbfounded. And he's got a few collections of short stories too.
And I I love people that play with form.
Yeah.
That aren't concerned about what's to come after the story's finished,
Yep.
I think if I can say one thing about writers that I love, and my friend Julian Davis and I talked about this, we talk about it all the time when we get together. Part of the reason I struggle with a lot of contemporary literature, particularly novels and short stories, is the self-consciousness of how it's going to be received. You can feel it while you're reading it.
Oh, that's exactly it. You can feel
so much
that's exactly
about
right.
what... And the reason I love Cather, the reason I love Welty, is they just say it.
Yeah.
They don't qualify a statement in the book. They don't add an addendum to it. Right. There is no extra sentence to explain themselves. And whether or not you want to interpret it as positive or negative, they don't care.
Sure.
It was not part of their life to say okay, I'm going to write this story and then I'm going to go back and see what do I need to change to make sure that a suburbanite in Northbrook, Illinois wouldn't get offended by this. They didn't give a shit at all. And you can tell, and that's why it's amazing to read.
And I've never thought about this before, but this is in keeping with Leanne Shapton and my story. Before he was a writer, he was a top pilot in the Air Force.
Of course he
was. A test pilot. Like he was sort of a peer of John Glenn. He writes with incredible insight about the jealousy of not being an astronaut, And that stuff is incredible. His memoir, Burning the Days, is the best. But the concerns of literary life are a joke to him, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's what I want. It's I want people who don't, they just don't care about that. And there's also something to, I do love people who are apart from, I don't want to say, and see here I am even qualifying my own statements because everybody's always, community's good. I'm not saying you can't, there's a difference between having friends and then feeling like you have to be a part of this nebulous literary community. Sure. I think the best writers are just do not give a shit about that at all. I think they're not worried about, would this writer respect me or like me? I mean, how could you possibly write a good story thinking about all these things? Because then your whole brain is focused on everything but the story.
Well, the writing speaks for itself.
Right.
You can't fake it.
And, there's been a lot of people in my life that I've liked, not even just artists, just people that everyone else doesn't like. And so to me, it's just, what's your taste? What do you really value in a writer? Just like, what do you value in a friend or a community member? And they might not be the most lovable person. I mean, look at you. You're bringing people together in the neighborhood, right? We all make our own choices about who we spend time with or what we spend time with. And I love that theme. There's always a theme that comes together that these people had these other lives. And I think there's something to be said.
Well, I mean, I guess we've all had other lives, of course. But definitely with Salter, he had a whole first
But it's not like
life.
it's not like he was destined to be a writer. You know what I mean? It's not like he tried to write at 15 and then...
He did love writing. And he wrote a first novel called The Hunters, which was about fighter pilots in Korea. And that was actually a big book and made into a movie with Robert Mitchum, right? And it was like a big deal. And then he directed a film he wrote a film called Downhill Skier with Robert Redford. And he directed a film. He did it all. He made some sports documentaries. And
I love it.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting dude. He's no longer with us. He died about 9 years ago. But that's my favorite writer.
Well, shout out James Salter. That's a great recommendation and one I look forward to getting into the bookstore.
Love
and
James
reading
Salter.
Myself. What's number 4?
A Man Named Doll by Jonathan Ames, a book no one else will talk to you about, I don't think.
I've never heard of this book as well.
If you read this book, you will love this book. This book is made for there's nothing more fun than reading this book, okay? Jonathan Ames, do you know Jonathan Ames? Jonathan Ames is an incredible person and writer, but personality in general. He was a professor of mine at Columbia when I was an undergrad, and he is the first writer to take me seriously as a writer, which is why he's important to me. But he's also an incredible writer. He's maybe best known for he's written several films. He had a TV series. He's had multiple TV series. He had one called Bored to Death that starred Jason Schwartzman as a writer named Jonathan Ames playing himself, which that ran for a few seasons. Anyway, he's hilarious. And what I appreciate about Jonathan Ames is he taught me several things, said several things to me that have stuck with me. And I think I mentioned earlier that when I teach, a lot of what I'm doing is just rehashing things that were taught to me, right? And so what I think about with this book, and I'll get to what this book is about, is Jonathan Ames studied with Joyce Carol Oates at Princeton. He would often talk about something that she said to him, which was, and I'm sure I'm getting this quote wrong. He probably got it wrong. I'm going to get it even more wrong. But when she's writing a book, she's just trying to find a way to get her soldiers over the bridge. And what that means to me, and I think what he's getting at, is the plot of the book is not what's important. That's a device to get into the consciousness of the mind on the page, which is then the consciousness of the writer. What are you thinking about? How are you going to find a way to get that consciousness to the reader? So, Jonathan Ames, this book is a hard-boiled, extremely violent noir that is about a detective named Happy Doll. It's the funniest book you'll ever read. And it's not about a funny man named Happy Doll or about the violence. When you finish reading this book, you're basically like, oh, this is about Jonathan Ames writing about how much he loves his dog. And I will read you a section.
I was not ready for that.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
He's an amazing comedic writer, too. So a lot of it is really funny. But I guess part of what I'm getting at is this is not his best known or most famous book. This is a recent one. He just started writing about this character, Happy Doll. Maybe The Extra Man or Wake Up Sir are his best known novels. But, there's something about not trying to write the most important book in the world. If you try to write the best book in the world, you're not going to write.
Hear, hear.
You just write the book you can write at that moment. Find a way to get your soldiers across the bridge. And if it comes to life, that's your book. And maybe it'll be the best book in the world. Maybe it'll just be a book. And I remember, thinking about that when I was in, my early writing career, it really allowed me to especially move on to my second novel. I was like, I don't need to write the best book. I just need to write a book. And this book, I mean, in a way, like, I can think of no greater enjoyment than reading this book. But like, Jonathan's not trying to like win the Nobel Prize with A Man Named Doll. He's just trying to get his soldiers across the bridge, and it's so great. Another thing that he taught me, which is a great lesson, which is if you write about what you're obsessed with, it's going to make the writing easier. If you're obsessed with something and you start writing about it, it's going to be great because that's what you're interested in. It doesn't matter if what you're obsessed with is stupid, right? Nothing is stupid if you're obsessed with it. So like for my second novel, I was obsessed with doubles tennis players, right? And
so this is where...
Yeah, and there's nothing you should write about less than doubles tennis play. Like nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, that sounds like great. But that's what I was thinking about, so it was a way for me to write about other things.
But you'd be surprised if someone just writes about what they're obsessed with, how many people might be interested in reading about that.
Right. But also, like, it's not about that specific obsession. It's about the entry point.
But it's like, I mean, I like being caught off guard about what someone's writing about. Like, why would you write a book about doubles tennis? Why would you use this plot or story to talk about your love of a dog? I mean,
he's obsessed with noir writers.
Yeah.
And so that's just, at this point in his career, he just ended up using that tool to write about what he was thinking about. And I'm going to take this opportunity to read part of it. This is about George. George is his dog. Trim and fit. He weighs about 22 pounds and has large mascara-rimmed eyes that break your heart and make you fall in love simultaneously. Unlike most dog owners, I don't project onto him that he's my child, my son. Rather, it's a more disturbed relationship than that. I think of him as my dear friend, whom I happen to live with. In that way, we're like two old-fashioned closeted bachelors who cohabitate and don't think the rest of the world knows we're lovers. He does have his own bed, which I banish him to every now and then, but that's very rare. And so we sleep together most every night of the year. He starts off with his head resting on the pillow next to me, giving me moony eyes as I read. I always read before going to bed. And then when I'm tired, I put my book down and bury my face in his neck and inhale his earthy dog smell, which I love. And then I kiss his neck like he's my wife before I turn off the light. And then he tries to put his tongue in my mouth, which I don't allow, but I let him lick the corner of my eye to get some salty crust or something else tasty. It's a whole ritual we have. And then when the lights go out, he burrows under the sheets and puts his warm body next to mine. Anyway, you get the idea. This is the most violent detective you could imagine, and he's obsessed.
And he's sitting here. This is, oh my gosh.
Love Jonathan Ames. Another thing, I was studying with Jonathan Ames right when I was finishing my music career. He had a big profile at the time. Still does.
Yeah.
You know. Point is, I was in his workshop. He was taking me seriously. I was older than some of the other students, so, he'd become friendly with me. I was in touch with him out of class, and I had a great gig playing on The Tonight Show, right? I got this gig to fly out to play Tonight Show with this musician, Ben Lee, who I was playing with. And so I sent an email out to literally like 7 people, who like, I wasn't like, you gotta watch this. And it was the most amazing thing because Jonathan Ames wrote back. I was going to be on Leno. He said, I would love to watch you on Leno, but I can't because I'm the guest on Letterman. That same night. And I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, we're the most important people in the world. But that isn't the actual point. What I thought about a lot is it was this moment where like leaving music to be a writer didn't seem like that different a thing for me because of the space I was in. It was like, oh, it's all just like, getting a book deal would be like getting a record deal and you have like, similar gigs and stuff. And so, and he like really demystified. He was like a surprisingly normal guy for being the strangest person that, anyone knows.
I love that though.
Anyway, yeah, and then I did watch him on Letterman that night and switched over to watch us play music. And it was like, I was like, this will never happen again.
Yeah.
And no, it hasn't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. I love weird people too, like weird writers who are surprisingly chill. And then you're like, okay, but how? How are you this crazy?
There's nothing better than just listening to him talk. I mean, that's why Letterman had him on maybe 3 times.
So he's a good good interview.
He's a public persona.
But I'm glad you brought
Jonathan Ames.
I can't
recommend.
It's a new voice. It's a new recommend. All of these are new recommendations.
I love recommending this book to people. It's so much fun to read.
Okay, so this is the other one I guessed correctly.
How did you guess this one?
It was something that came up.
This is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle that we're talking about.
Have you taught Rita before?
I haven't. It probably was on one of my syllabi. I think I wanted to teach it, or part of it.
I don't remember exactly.
Maybe I spoke about it when you saw me in North Carolina.
It was something I was like, I feel like this is going to be part of this collection. And then I was like, oh, this is a book I'm going to give someone in the future.
Oh, please do.
So,
yeah. Well, it's an incredible book, and it's not, it was nominated for all the big awards and it's gotten a lot of attention. It is called a novel. It really isn't. It's really a collection of linked stories that happen during a boxing tournament.
Yeah.
The 12th annual Women's 18 and Under Daughters of America Cup boxing tournament at Bob's Boxing Palace from July 14th to July 15th, 2000 XX. She doesn't give the exact year, but you can find the bracket of young women who are boxing against each other on the first page of the book, and the book goes through the tournament bracket by bracket, giving us the consciousness of each boxer in different chapters. And it's all young women under 18 who are involved in high-level boxing. And this novel came out last year before.
Incredible. Like, I love that particular setting.
Totally. So for me, there are a couple of reasons this book is really important. One is she's a lot younger than me, I think. She looks like it. It's her first book. A lot of these other books, Jonathan Ames' novel is pretty new, but I've been reading him since the early 2000s. And I read a lot of contemporary books, and it's really important to keep finding ones that inspire me. And she does a lot in this book that is unlike anything I've ever seen anybody do before. And, whether we want to admit it or not, art changes over time for whatever reason. And I'm not going to try to unpack the mysteries behind that. Art changes over time. And whether we want to admit it or not, we are contemporary artists simply because we are alive today. And so for me, it's incredibly important that I listen to new music every day and read the newest writing that's come out, especially if it's doing something that I haven't seen before or makes me uncomfortable or I'm trying to wrap my head around. And because it keeps me sort of thinking about new ways to, approach the art form. But this is a real technical tour de force of consciousness. It's incredible what she does going into the minds of these young women. So it's basically just a deep collection of access to the consciousness of teenage female boxers, which is not a consciousness you see a lot. And she goes deep and in super surprising ways. And at the same time, you are reading who's going to win the match.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
even down to the basic level, you're still wondering about the thing itself.
The structure is sort of genius. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. Yeah. They're who's going to win the match? It's a sports novel in a way, but not at all.
How did you come to this?
Oh, just reading about it. Might have been Dwight Garner, my favorite critic. He's a book critic at the New York Times, and he's one of my favorite writers, period. His criticism is holy smoke. I love his writing so much. If you hear me in here laughing, I'm laughing at a book review he wrote. And if he says something's good, it's good. And I think maybe I read a review. I think he reviewed it. If he gives a good review, I buy the book. I
appreciate that about you and many other people that are older relative to some of the newer writers that aren't, I always make the comparison of Shaq and Charles Barkley. Basketball players are better than you were in a lot of ways. Just admit it, but the hating is it's really unattractive for a fan to see haters that are in their 50s that are now 100 pounds heavier than what they were.
Sure.
That were also just very limited as players themselves. And now that they see these guys doing things that they couldn't have dreamed of 4 inches taller than them and playing like a guard. You know, to me, it's so exciting to watch basketball because of this, but it's like a huge bummer to see people not giving people their due and honestly, clearly not watching the game. I think they fell out of love with basketball because they just stopped watching it to appreciate the beauty of the game and what's happening. It's all a judgment. And I could probably say the same for writers, whereas like they're like stacking themselves or other writers they love up against instead of just appreciating, is this a really good book or not? And my friend and I have talked about this. He's one of my best friends since 5th grade. One of our biggest issues with growing up is realizing how much it sucks to recognize old people that give up on learning and appreciating new voices in any art form or just like being excited about things that come out now.
Totally.
Doesn't mean you don't. I still listen to rap from the mid-aughts and late-aughts because it's my favorite time in 90s. But I'm never going to stop listening to new people because it's how there's always going to be new people that inspire you. You just never know. And then sometimes people come back around that have made albums that you loved 10 years ago. And that's great too, that nostalgia.
Yeah.
But maybe it was new artists that inspired them to make music. But the point is, it's great to hear you talk this way because sometimes it's upsetting to just hear how people are like, oh, nothing's good past a certain point, or they couldn't be good because they're younger than some arbitrary number. They were born in this decade. It's like, man, you're missing out.
So true, man. I mean, and of course, like, if you think about music, is there anything more depressing than hearing an artist who, like, it sounds like they haven't listened to anything since 1993? You know, you're like, oh. But, man, Rita Bullwinkle.
And what a name.
She is incredible. I mean, this woman, you got to read this book.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
And I mean, this isn't somebody I know. You know, this is the other thing with the writing world. There's a lot of, like, personal connections that either complicate a reading experience or inspire a reading experience. I don't know her. I mean, she's like, I'm sure we have 1 degree, I'm sure, but like, man, she is one hell of a writer.
I will say, and look, I am, as a bookseller, my whole view on book selling is share what you love. Don't talk about what you dislike, because it's just, obviously one means way more than the other. Like why would I talk about a book I don't like? No one wants to hear that. And also so a lot of it is because the best thing I could say is I just didn't like it.
Yeah, not my thing.
But sometimes you realize, like, man, there is a chorus of people who all know each other that talk about a writer as if they are some god. And then you read their book and you're like, I don't like this at all. But all that is to say is that go outside of your circle.
Yeah.
In anything in life. Just trust that, if you just open the options, the possibilities in different art, and with different books or different music, that sometimes I don't want to know what someone feels about something. To be honest, that's what I struggled with when Bear came out by Julia Phillips. Mm-hmm. And then I was forced to read it because I interviewed her. But those first couple of months, so many people were talking about it that I'm like, I'm going to wait 2 years so that no one's talking about it while I read it. Because I just don't want to know all the time what everybody has to say, because it's gonna affect you,
I agree
100%. Like, what if I totally disagree and now I can't like participate in the chorus of people that are loving on this book? And then the other part of it is like, sometimes it's just good to go in without any knowledge or feeling like I'm sitting down with a book.
That's my favorite way to experience it. I don't like to read the back of a novel.
Nope.
In fact, frankly, the only way I can watch a movie is I watch a lot of really strange foreign indie movies that I don't read about, and I click on them I won't even know if it's a documentary or a film. I subscribe to Mubi, which like all the film nerds get, but I'll just open it up, not Tubi, Mubi, and I just pick a movie and hit play, and I love not knowing what's getting ready to happen because it's the art proving itself without all the other
And it doesn't mean I don't trust people's opinions. Obviously, I do. I read so much of the books that are shared on this podcast because I want to know what you all have to say and what you would share. That's great. But there is a limit to that. And it's just cool when you find an exciting voice that kind of like, I was walking in a bookstore today.
Yeah,
That's how I found out about a lot of people. I mean, City Lights has opened so many.
Oh my God, I'm sure. What
threads
a great bookstore.
of reading just because I'm there and I'm just looking around like what seems good today. You know, I did not go in because I read a list and then I was going to buy this specific book. I literally just was like, let's walk around. Let's see what
Living the
really,
dream.
really catch. Yeah, I mean, it's great. And that's the beauty of books and bookstores. You never know what's going to come of it. But there's an author, she's a poet, that I'm going to interview. Her name's, and I want to shout out Raisa Tolchinsky, because her poetry collection, Glassjaw, debut poetry collection, which is incredible, is poetry. Each poem is from the lens of a female boxer in New York City, because she was an amateur.
Oh, well, she's read this book.
Probably.
Right?
You never know, but
she surely knows about it if she hasn't.
But it's like so interesting to me that you pick, like Raisa, when she had, I think, followed me on Instagram, I'd already read the book. And when she did that, I was like, oh, I mean, I have to ask now to go visit her, because I would have never thought of loving a poetry book about all of these women, amateur boxers in New York City and their perspective. But I surprised myself.
You know, Jonathan Ames is an amateur boxer.
Oh my gosh,
and
really?
That's actually how I got sort of interested in boxing. I've always been a little bit interested, really just because of him. And so, like, there are some excellent boxing novels, but there is a thread there from Jonathan Ames to Headshot.
And to be honest, I've picked up more boxing art, whether it's films, like there was one about an amateur boxer that the star of season 4 of True Detective, not Jodie Foster, and I am blanking on her name. Gosh. But it's a indie film where she plays an amateur boxer that has to help find her sister. But like I pick those up because my brother is obsessed with boxing. I don't get it. Like I've watched matches with him and it's exciting. I don't understand the sport,
I mean,
but like he did his undergrad thesis at the University of Cincinnati on like this big rivalry in the 50s. He's just obsessed with boxing. And that's what I've always loved about him, is he just does not care if anybody else is obsessed with it. But, he became like part of boxing Twitter. Like, and then like went to a match with all these people that had known each other from Twitter, because there's very few people that are like actively watching and tweeting about boxing like that, especially from like the technical level.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves boxing, the sport. So I always pick up more things because of that. And Raisa Tolchinsky, I was like, well, why not?
Well,
I bet
you
my
should
brother
read
would like it.
Fat City. You should read.
Fat City.
Yeah, and by I can't remember who wrote it. James Garner? No.
Okay.
I don't know. New York Review Books, I think, publishes it. No, it's incredible.
Sweet.
No, yeah, it's really great.
I love it. Anyway, so that's a great one.
Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. Got to read that.
Now we get to number 6. Which is such an exciting cap to this stack.
You aren't here to see this book, but this is a book that I probably spent the most time reading. Probably know every sentence on every page. Actually, this is a new edition. I keep giving away my own copies of this book. So this edition has some new chapters in it. But the podcast, I understand, is Books on the Bed.
Yeah.
And there's no book I give away more than this book, because when I have visitors, they're inevitably interested in what you discover is my obsession at my house, which is stonemasonry.
You're the stonescaping evangelist here.
Yeah, so I do just sort of nonstop dry stack stone wall building. Our property is sort of sneaky big and on a weird slope and old, and there was a lot of stone walls on the property that needed to be rebuilt, and some others that weren't even really stone walls, and I just got obsessed about 10 years ago. Well, and I started building about a 5-foot section out front when we first bought the house, and it just happened to be a weekend that we went up to Asheville to visit one of my wife's friends. She lives on a mountain with her family, and I was talking to her father, and I mentioned he had a little dry stack wall near the house, and I said, I just started one of those this week. He said, I have the book for you, and he went in and got this book, The Complete Guide to Stonescaping, and gave it to me. In fact, until this morning, I didn't even know who wrote this book. David Reed. David Reed, I know every word you've ever written.
David Reed, you are a king.
Yeah. And
this is the gift that keeps on giving.
Right. But, and this is not a literary masterpiece. It's literally a how to build a dry stack stone wall.
See, but this is why I put 0 limits on the books.
Yeah.
Because I just want to know what people are thinking about and loving on.
This is
what do you want to share?
I walked Matt out back to show him my insane recent stone wall project.
And it's impressive.
It'll take months to finish that. But for me, it's great to have something to read that doesn't make me think about my job as a writer. And like even if I'm watching, I teach screenwriting. So if I'm watching a film, I'm thinking about where the plot points are. I'm thinking about the construction of the story. And so there's a reason why I watch a lot of baseball and a lot of Antiques Roadshow. Because
you listen on the radio
I do
to baseball?
listen on the radio to baseball because I like encountering non-scripted, sort of stories or events. Anyway, stonescaping. When I finish a book, and I just finished a new book, this has happened a few times, that's when I get biggest into a new stone wall project. And I think that's when I'm healthiest mentally, is when I'm just doing stonemasonry. So I've done this all day long just for the past 6 weeks, I guess. That's all I do.
This is so cool. I love knowing this about you and seeing the fruit of your labor.
And it is super weird, but it's so satisfying. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that increases your property value. But it's although I am writing a character who's obsessed with stonemasonry right now, but it isn't something most people don't, nobody knows that I'm obsessed with stonemasonry, but you're at my house.
But now we're in this little corner. See, this is why I visit people, because there's so much that you learn so much about a person from where they live and what's in their house, not just the books. Y'all are way more than what you write and what you read. Like I said, I wouldn't have. It's not that I wrote off Nic Brown the stonemason. It's not that I didn't have that as a possibility. Like, you could be anything. You're an interesting person. You've already been a drummer and a writer.
But I don't.
But it definitely wasn't in the top 50.
For those who
I
can't,
thought you'd be obsessed with.
I'm a small, bald man who doesn't give off stonemasonry.
Which makes it even better.
Yeah.
You're just out here toiling away. Neighbors are like, wow, this little English professor's really going at it.
Man, I was so pleased with myself. I had a neighbor come up yesterday. He's like, Nick, I just can't believe what you're doing. And it's like,
my goal, like living in a small Appalachian town, is for someone just to, like, I need to find something where I can build it, and they're like, man, that's a hell of a shed, or whatever.
I have the book for you, my friend. That's why I brought it here, The Complete Guide to Stonescaping. You might bring me
the biggest compliment would be for someone who is the opposite of me, which is basically like my neighbor who is building a porch around his entire house every night after working for Orkin.
Yeah.
He just comes home at 7 and he's pounding away, and I hate him for it and I love him for it.
Yeah,
because he's annoying the shit out of me, but I'm also like, look at what he's done. But man, if he comes out one time and I build a stone wall and he says, Matt, this is an impressive stone wall, I've made it. There's no better compliment than from my neighbor that I built something great.
So the best moment of my life, there's a man who lived in the neighborhood. He's a Clemson legend. We're here in Clemson, South Carolina, and Colonel Ben Scarden. And he was the oldest living survivor of the Bataan Death March. And he lived to be over 100. He lived about a block and a half away. And he was also an English professor at Clemson. Now, obviously retired long, long ago. And Colonel Scarden passed away about 3 years ago, maybe. But this was when he was still alive. He's a legend, in the neighborhood. And I really wanted to meet him. I'm an English professor. I wanted to talk to him about it. And I was working on a stone wall out front, which I'd been working on for maybe a year. And he was walking. He was training, because every year he would recreate part of the Bataan Death March in the desert.
Oh, my God.
This guy was amazing. Anyway, he's training. He's walking along, not fast. He's coming along. And I sigh, and I turn around and I say, Colonel Scarden, I want to introduce myself. He goes, oh, okay. And I said, I'm Nic Brown, and I know you were an English professor, and I'm an English professor. He goes, you're not an English professor? And I thought, oh, boy, he's older than I thought, okay. And I said, no, I'm an English professor here at Clemson. He goes, no, you're not. You're a stonemason. This guy's sharper than any of us. And I thought, I said, oh, my God, Colonel Scarden, that's the best thing anybody's ever said to me.
See, there are moments in life like that are completely outside of like any literary award.
Totally.
Where it's just like, I don't need anything else for my self-esteem, and that's it. I love that so much.
And then when he turned 100, I think Jack Daniels sent him like a case of whiskey. He invited me over and I had a drink with him. It was all of my dreams had come true.
Gosh, I wish I was there.
Oh, yeah, you do.
But I love meeting people like that.
He was amazing.
I just
incredible dude.
Yeah, man. Oh my, that is so. See, look what just a gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You got that great compliment because someone said, hey, why don't you check out this book?
And honestly, this is the book that I put on somebody's bed or give away the most, because a lot of my friends are like, I got a project, and I see, like, how do you do it? And I'm like, here it is, man. Here it is.
Here's the Bible.
And actually, you don't really need to read the whole book. It's just look at the diagram on page 52 that explains the gravel backfill and the capstone to foundation ratio. It's all yours, Matt. I see a future of you building stone walls with your neighbor. All of a sudden, he's coming down to help you.
Yeah. It just is a different, because I still struggle. My whole life is literature, I sell books. I do a book podcast. Like sometimes I do certain things just to say and that's why I love movies, because I can just watch them.
But it's still storytelling. You need to start stacking stone.
It is. Part of the reason I love living in the mountains is I will go outside. I don't bring my phone. I will hike for 8 miles. And I will do nothing but just be in nature, because I need to not like consume anything, and here's just like we talked about with gardening and, just the whole thing of labor taking you out of your mind. And I believe this author lives in Asheville. I think he's an Asheville stonemason. So you could probably, I met a guy once who worked with him. Really? Yeah, it was like meeting a disciple, I hope he has an Instagram or something so I can tag it. Because when I share the photos of these books with each episode, it would be so fun. This would be the first one of its kind. That's one. At no point has anybody given a construction book or like any. Well, there's a second book that I read. It's less useful, but this is called In the Company of Stone. And this, again, another neighbor on the other side of the block saw this, and he brought this out and gave it to my wife when she was walking the dog. This book is amazing, by the stonemason Dan Snow. Oh, now, he's actually like a sort of literary genius. This isn't a how-to book, but anyway. What a cover, too. Oh, the photos. Yeah, that looks like an art book. It is. Yeah. Gosh, that's so good. This is like, I am so delighted by this. Driving here, I was excited about the books, and I knew there'd be some great novels or short stories or memoirs. And to have this, truly, this is like such a great interruption in the typical, like I don't even know what to do with it. Like I'm excited. I'm so excited about this. There's some nights when I just reread the same page in the Complete Guide to Stonescaping again and again and again. Because when when you have a problem with the mortaring of a joint or something, you've read it and you reread it and you're like, oh yeah, I did that right. Yeah. Like you're damn right I did. Been working at it for weeks. That's right. And yeah, gosh, this is so good. Oh my gosh, what a stack. This is no overlap, pure Nic Brown. Wow. 6. That's what it is. This is why I love it. I love just the intimacy of it, the fact that no one else are going to share these things. And, I'm just glad to be here with you. I knew when I met you, because I'm interviewing Tessa next month too. Oh, awesome. So there was there are a lot of authors I love reading, but I just knew I would interview both of you when I met you, and I heard you at the Lit Fest. So it's cool to have it. I'm so excited you're here. To fruition, because you're just a cool dude, and I like being with good people who I love their writing. That's the joy of this. But now I know you're a stonemason too, and it makes the legend of you grow even greater. Maybe someday I'll come down and just help you out with a project and start an apprenticeship. Well, I got a whole pallet of new fieldstone that needs to be moved. It's an hour and a half drive, you know what I mean? Anytime. Let's start chiseling that rock, building those walls. It's addictive. Well, so before we're done, because we started this episode with that lovely reading, and I told you about the book ending of Pete and the story about the eclipse with your daughter, which were the two most emotional chapters for me, where I kind of had to stop and regroup, because I was like, damn, that was great. Like that was something. That was a moment in a book that you'll always remember. And you write very beautifully about this experience of the eclipse and what it means to be a father, because your books and your daughter are the most linked they could possibly be. It's insane. Because your daughter was born on the same, or your wife was in labor the same day that you got your contract for your first 2 books, correct? Yeah. Frances was
actually was born the morning after.
Okay.
Abby was in labor for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But
nonetheless, you got the call, and it was the one thing that can make you say, could we talk about this another time?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's the one thing that would make me tell my agent, great, I can't take this call.
And I imagine, it would have been the same thing with music, right? Like there's some things that just take precedent over the other thing. But to have those moments, one would be the second best day of your life, maybe after the record deal. But then it's kind of like an afterthought, really, because you had this beautiful baby.
Yeah, right? August 21st, 2008.
And so I would like you to read about your emotions of being a father that came from this eclipse that happened. I did another thing where I put the marker there.
Okay.
Which I think I meant to start there and then go through the end. Okay. But you can start wherever you want. This is just too good not to share.
Well, there was a total eclipse of the sun that passed through here in Clemson. All we had to do was go into our front yard to see it on August 21st, 2000 and what year was the
2016?
Yeah.
Wait, no.
It was 2017.
Yeah, because I remember I was in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, because it was Francis's 9th birthday. So I wrote an essay about that eclipse and the fact that when my wife was in labor, it was the same day I got the call I'd been waiting for that I finally got a book deal. I will start with the end of the scene where we're actually witnessing the eclipse, which really was transformative. I didn't understand. I was like, yeah, whatever. I've seen partial eclipses. I'm not interested. It blew my mind. So for a little over 2 minutes, we screamed and we pointed and we demanded that everyone look. And then a sliver of the sun reemerged, and I could have sworn that only 20 seconds had passed. I felt tears in my eyes. It was over too soon. I wanted it back, but it wasn't coming back. At least not until May 11, 2078, the next time another total solar eclipse will pass over my yard, at which point I will either be 101 years old or dead. At bedtime that night, my daughter and I lay on her mattress together. I just can't stop thinking about the eclipse, she said. I feel like someone arranged for it to be on my birthday. I know, I said. That's the best day I've ever, she searched for the word, lived. I knew what she meant. I'd had one of those days 9 years earlier, the day she was born, and I learned that my books would be published. The day my own eclipse came to an end. That dark stretch of life when I felt all my hopes had been dashed. And then years before that, I'd had another best day too. On the cold night, we learned about our first offer for a recording contract, when I felt all my dreams had come true. But do I really care that much about dreams? I'm not sure that I do, because I don't miss playing the drums much at all these days. And I fear that if pressed, I wouldn't miss writing much either, if for some reason it disappeared from my life. My daughter's different, though. Her childhood is the eclipse I truly don't want to end. Planets keep spinning, though. They flip day to night. And with every August 21st that comes around, my daughter keeps getting older. I have no lingering concerns about appreciating my music career while I had it. I wrung a fair amount of pleasure out of it when it was happening and knew that I had it good. And I feel pretty certain I have a grasp on how lucky I am to have made a life for myself as a writer as well. I'm much less confident about my perspective of my life as a father, though. I just keep wondering how many more days like this one I'll have, a best day, as my daughter described it, before she'll be grown. And if, by then, her childhood will have passed by me completely before I even know how best to appreciate it. I'll just be a man looking around for something that's gone by that point, like I was after the solar eclipse. A guy simply standing there amazed, wishing it all would come back.